Last year, I grossed $176,000 as a software engineer with just over 2.5 years of experience. And of that $176K, I invested just over $95,000, which equates to over half of my yearly income. And the short and sweet of why I did that is because I want to fast track my way to FIRE. Now, if you're not super into personal finance or not a tech bro, you might not know what FIRE is, but FIRE stands for Financial Independence Retire Early, which I think is pretty self-explanatory. But basically, it's the goal to accumulate enough wealth to live off of your investment returns indefinitely, which in turn lets you pursue your passions, hobbies, and interests without being tied to a traditional job. Whether those interests, passions, or hobbies include traveling the world, raising kids, pursuing that art thing that your mom told you would never pay the bills, or just sitting on your couch all day watching TV. Now, in order to reach FIRE, you basically have to invest enough money to live off the interest and returns of your investment. Now, this works by withdrawing a certain percentage from your portfolio each year with the assumption that your portfolio will keep on growing and you will not run out of money. This percentage is called the safe withdrawal rate, and from what I've seen online, what's recommended is anywhere from 3% to 4%, depending on how conservative you are and how long you're going to be retiring for. So for me, my FIRE number is in the ballpark of $2.5 million US dollars. This would give me close to 75,000 USD each year, depending on a withdrawal rate of 3%. Now, I do expect my lifestyle to inflate over the next couple of years, like I am still only 25, so I'm not exactly sure of this number. But with my current napkin projections, I could reach my FIRE numbers by my mid-30s. Now, of course, life happens, things do change, and I'm expecting my plan to change, but it's reassuring to know that I'm so far on track for my goals. Now, if you want to calculate your own FIRE number, a quick thing that you can do is take your yearly expenses and multiply them by 3,000. This would give you a rough estimate of how much money you would need to invest in order to cover your living expenses and therefore making you financially independent. And with that info, you can go around and play with a compound interest calculator to see how much money you would need to invest each month, each year, and for how long in order to reach that FIRE number for you. Now, in practice, the RE or retire early part of FIRE is a lot more complicated. There are a bunch of different withdrawal strategies that depend on where you live, where you're retiring, how you're pulling your money out of your accounts, how you're abusing your tax advantage accounts. On top of that, there's a whole lot of bookkeeping and that sacrificial pact you have to make with the finance lords. That last one was a joke. Now, there's a bunch of different types of FIRE. There's lean FIRE, which means that no matter what, you want to exit the working force. You want to live as lean as possible. Then there's chubby FIRE, which basically means like you're just living a nice lifestyle. And fat FIRE, which basically means you're just rich. There's also expat FIRE, which means basically you're taking advantage of a higher dollar, moving somewhere else, and retiring there way earlier than you would if you had stayed in the US or Canada, for example. And forest FIRE. That last one is also a joke. I just kept that in there to see if you were paying attention. Now, I find this part about personal finance and FIRE super interesting, and that's why I have this YouTube channel. But I can acknowledge for most people, that's probably not the case. So let me answer the big question as to why FIRE for me specifically. Now, when I sat down to write bullet points for this video, I really couldn't find a succinct way to, wrap it all up in a very digestible way to understand. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna ramble at the camera for the next, minute or two. For me, FIRE does not mean having a nice car, nice houses, super bougie vacations, nice watches, that sort of thing. For me, it really just means freedom. Like, say, for example, if I didn't like my job. And that's not to say I don't like my current job. I actually like it a lot. But in the circumstance where I don't, right? Like, I'm put on a project I don't like, or there's a reorg and I get a manager I don't like. In any of those situations, I want the ability to just say, you know what? I'm not working anymore. And if we're being real, I don't love software engineering. I don't think about this in my spare time. I really just do it as a job. And as a job, it's great. I love it. But just as a job, it's not something that I'm truly passionate about. So the idea of being independent from this job that I have and not having to do something that I'm not passionate about every single day has always made so much sense to me. Like, we're all human beings floating on this piece of rock in space. And you and I, we say that we have free will. But like, do we really? Like, if I wanted to, could I stop working today and basically just play guitar for the rest of my life, try to go pro in the guitar world? Probably not, because A, I kind of suck at playing guitar, and B, I need money for my rent, for food, and like, I kind of just like nice things. And that just kind of like makes me upset, Like, we have a certain amount of time on this earth, and the average life expectancy is like 75 years old. But are those last 30 years of your life really that high quality? Like, you're going to be old, you're going to be frail, and you're not going to be able to do all the things that you wanted to do today, or when you're younger, or when you have the energy to do it. But the reality is 60, 65 is when all of these mega corporations want you to retire. Like, they want to extract all the value out of you while you're still young and before you get old and frail. And from a capitalism standpoint, this like makes complete sense. Like, if I was an employer, I would want to do the exact same thing. The years when you're young is when you're going to be the most productive, the most passionate, and the most creative about anything that you're doing. Of course, these mega corporations would extract the best years of your life, the most productive, creative years of your life, and then leave you with the boring parts. And for me, I will just not accept that. In my eyes, there's more to life than increasing shareholder value. And I can acknowledge that this is a very privileged take, and I would not have the same opinion if I didn't make as much money at this age. And because of my high income, I'm not really making a ton of huge sacrifices. I'm still able to do a lot of trips each year, and I still get nice things and I still live in a nice place. So it's pretty clear that I am truly in such a lucky situation. And I think that's another big reason as to why I'm so focused and interested in FIRE. Growing up, my family was not rich. We were definitely not poor, but I for sure can say we were not rich, somewhere in like the lower middle class. And I've seen how hard my parents have worked in order to get me to the spot I am right now. Just as one example, my mom was a refugee from the Vietnam War, came to Canada without knowing any English, and at the same time learned English and French to later become a French teacher. So aside from my own luck and hard work, there are so many people behind me that have sacrificed in order for me to be right here, right now, making this video. And I do think that this is a big part of why I keep making these videos. Like, I feel with my limited but growing knowledge of personal finance, I'm doing a disservice by not advocating for FIRE. Like, I literally feel like an evangelical Christian, but instead of Jesus, it's 401ks. Sorry for that joke in advance, Mom. So like I said, I really do feel like I have a golden ticket / opportunity. So I really have no option other than to grind and take advantage of it. And I feel like a lot of you watching right now have a very similar opportunity. Software engineering is a relatively high paying field versus the amount of time you have to study. Like, the ratio on it is insane. Like, for sure, there are other high paying fields out there like doctors or lawyers, but those all take many, many years of school and lots of debt. Like, for example, doctors. I don't know how long you go to school for, like, I think like 12 years, 8 years, something like that, and you graduate with hundreds of thousands of dollars in student debt. And then after all of that, they make, like, I don't know, anywhere from $400,000 to $600,000, which is great, don't get me wrong. But on the flip side, if you're super cracked at coding, you go to school for 4 years, have a minimal amount of debt, graduate, and at the age of 21, 22, you go work at like Citadel, Jane Street, Facebook, one of those big companies, and you're making like $250K starting salary. And this is not even scratching the surface on the opportunities that people in tech have. A lot of us have the option to go remote, which means we can move to lower cost of living areas. We don't have to commute every single day, and we're sitting in front of a computer, so we're not breaking our back in the sun like someone that's working construction or someone that's working in an oil field, for example. Even business people have the downside of having to play dress up every single day to go work, where for the most part, we can show up to work in sweats and sandals if we wanted to. Now, all this is to say is that if you have the opportunity to pursue FIRE, I really think you should do something about it. Now, this isn't to say you should go full tech bro and like only wear company t-shirts that you got for free so you can save money and invest all of it. Like, there is definitely a balance. In the past, I've kind of did the whole entire tech bro thing, and it honestly really sucked. I would not recommend it. So there's a fine line that you have to teeter between saving for your future and enjoying yourself while you're young and actually can use the money. But I will say at the same time, the money in your 20s works way harder than it does in your 30s, 40s, 50s, etc. So front loading a lot of your saving and investings while you're young is going to pay you huge dividends in the future. I've invested enough at my age that if I never invested a single dollar anymore, I could retire by the age of 65 3 or 4 times over. And even though my aspirations are to retire earlier than that, knowing that in the back of my mind gives me a little bit of peace of mind. Now, if you are interested in FIRE and specifically what you can do as a person in tech, you can watch this video right here where I go over the money tips that you need to know as a young software engineer.